Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to SpeakuP Monday here, Tropical Nomad. Tonight we have a wonderful guest, Christine R. Manson from Terra Water, Indonesia. Wonderful. So tonight, if you're interested in that discussion about water, water being life, water being incredibly important for Indonesia and the future of water, then you've come to the right place. And remember, if you're interested to take this conversation further, please get in touch with us either on Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook to have more of a private session where we can go deeper into the topics that we want to be discussing. So look, Christina, welcome to the show, darling.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. So with water, right, so it's obviously something we all drink. What would you say is the biggest challenge to water usage and conservation, if that's a great word for this, here in Indonesia?
That's a good question. I'd actually say the biggest challenge is how do you make water sexy? Because then you really have a conversation, right? It's not a cool topic, conservation, water usage. These aren't things people think about. But if you can make water sexy, if you can make it a topic that people are genuinely interested in, then they care about conservation, they care about usage. So Bali, obviously the water table here is depleting very quickly. People are building massive developments. They're using a lot of water. The water table's going down. They're drilling deeper and deeper. This is all a problem. We have years like we've had this year where it actually replenishes the water table. It's fantastic, but not every year is like this, right? In fact, last year it hardly rained at all. So these are real issues, and I think water is a basic human right, and because of that, we take advantage of it, which means that we aren't cognizant of its usage, and we aren't cognizant of conserving it in the right ways. So it's a challenge.
And so you have a company, Terra, which we'll talk about a little bit more later on, but what is Terra doing to assist or to solve these challenges that you're bringing up now?
Interestingly, we have really amazing partners that work on water conservation. We don't. Our mission really is to get safe drinking water to Indonesians that don't have it, and to offer cost-effective, sustainable solutions to families that do have access to water. Water is a basic human right. Everyone should have it. You literally can't live without it. But how do you ensure that everybody has it? And that's where making water sexy is absolutely imperative, right? So that's our mission. We, as a company, believe that water belongs to everybody. So we have a product line for every economic status, every pocketbook. But we work with key partners who are working on water conservation and ensuring that water table maintains an appropriate usage rate by things like holding companies accountable, and by calling out polluters who are using plastic water, because those companies too are sucking water from our environment. So EDEP is a good one. If you haven't heard of EDEP, they're working on water conservation. Yeah.
So then Terra's got a few different dimensions, right? So one, as you mentioned, it has products. One, it sounds like a lobby group, right, that's kind of pushing this and working with collaboration partners, research material to kind of vertically integrate into what the problems are, and then how can we solve them, right?
Yeah.
So then the biggest solutions that you're working on now, maybe looking a little bit further into the future, can you share some of the things that Terra's working on?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of it comes down to things like behavior change, which you're like, what is behavior change? Getting people to think about their water. So you go into a hotel now and they have a little sign that says, if you want to reuse your towel, fantastic, we would love that, but we'd be happy to wash it for you. But we use water to wash your towel over and over again. Little things like that, so that you start to educate the average consumer on these practices that are better for the planet. And they're better for us too. So we're working with hospitality partners on things like that. We're committed to drinking water, right? That's our focus, is drinking water. It's the same thing. So plastic water bottle companies are our arch nemesis, right? If you can get people to stop drinking out of a plastic bottle, you're doing something right. So going back to that idea of behavior change, how do you tell someone that drinking from their well through a filter is safe when all they've ever drank out of was a plastic water bottle, and they crack open that top and it feels so safe and secure? It's a very difficult task, but that's our commitment, and we're working with key partners to do that.
Well, we had Made Janur on here, I think a few weeks ago, and he's got this, it's like a martial artist way of dealing with it. It's like you do something 100 times, you remember it. Yep. You do something 1,000 times, then it begins to become a habit. You do something 10,000 times, and it's second nature. It's in the subconscious mind. So this thing about re-educating, retraining how people do things, is critical. So how in depth are you going, and what kind of strategies can maybe people which are watching this now, we buy single-use plastic, we drink our water out of that, how can you begin to re-educate us?
It's challenging because we're so habitual. We're so used to doing what we know. And we have, things like COVID bring things like public health to the forefront, right? We're worried about water. We're worried about sanitation already, right? So opening that plastic water bottle feels safer than drinking out of the well, for example. So it's taking a lot of part on our part. In the urban area with our customers that, for lack of a better word, that buy the product, usually they're motivated by the environment. So if we can assure them that the product is trusted, that it actually purifies the water, then we can also talk to them about the plastic and the carbon and the environmental savings that they would be contributing to by switching to using a filter, right? In the villages, it's completely different education. What we're educating people on is water sanitation and hygiene. It's the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 6. And essentially, Indonesia is on par with most of the other countries in the world who are working on the SDGs for 2030 to provide access to water, sanitation, and hygiene to all Indonesians. But in the villages, it's a completely different type of education because they actually have no problem drinking out of the filter. In Indonesia, in fact, they've been drinking out of terracotta pots for thousands of years, so it's like no problem. What we have to educate them on is why it's not okay to defecate or to put their toilet near their drinking water source. Why it's important to wash their hands after cutting up a chicken before they cook dinner, or changing a diaper, right? Because that's where bacteria comes from. But all of this leads people to more sustainable solutions that are all actually not just better for the environment, but better for their health.
So then that's in the villages. So then how do you, I say we as because we're a collective, right? So how do we incentivize, your average person who, they care about the planet, but it's not a major concern, right? Global change, climate warming, but it doesn't really affect me that much, right? So how do you incentivize those sorts of people?
That's where making water sexy comes in. So I started Terra here in Bali. I could have started it anywhere in Indonesia, right? The drinking water problem, it's an epidemic in the country, not just because of the plastic, but because more than 10% of children under the age of 5 are still dying of diarrheal diseases. So I could have started this company in Lombok or Java. I started it in Bali because Bali's cool and Bali's sexy. And if I can create a brand and a product here that is cool, then everybody will use it. So that's one way we've done it. We've also done market studies where we look at what motivates people in the safe water space. And we found out that it's really the environment. With the educated population, it's really the environment. As you move down the pyramid, and we work with what we call the bottom of the pyramid, it's the poorest of the Indonesians. And in Indonesia, it's like almost 30% of the population. These are people with no disposable income. They're living on $1 or less a day. We make water cool by educating them on all these other things, right? An aspirational lifestyle, for example. If they know that people in the cities are healthy, they're eating well, they live well because they have access to safe water, they don't spend as much money on things like healthcare, then they want that life too. So we have to bring that down to them. But it's interesting because we also bring the bottom of the pyramid up to people like you and me who are motivated by social issues. So it's a really interesting dynamic.
would love to see the infographic. You know, like I can see like a flow diagram coming in there. You know, I think it's great. And remember, for those of you watching here, if this is a topic that interests you, you know, what we're going to do, as I mentioned at the beginning, is that they'll reach out to us, and we're going to create. You know, it could be a morning, it could be another day where we can mastermind, come together, and have some really deeper conversations than what we're able to go tonight with Christine and a limited few. So we can do that as well. But Christine, so I get a bit about, you know, where your company is, you know, but two questions come up. Firstly, why are you the best person to do this? That's the first one.
I don't know that I am. And I may have started this business and I may be in charge now, but there will be a day when I'm not the best person for the job. But I am the best person to start the job. And part of the reason is because Terra started as a social enterprise, which means that the social mission is the foundation of the company. I come from a background in humanitarian development, disaster relief, public health. So the water side, I got it. Why families need this? No problem. Business, sales, oh, that's where it gets scary, right? I'm like, what am I doing? But I'm also clearly passionate about it, right? I could talk about this all day long. So having me be the representative of this, it works for now. So that's one of the reasons why I think I am doing what I'm doing. The other is this technology in particular it's actually open source, which means you could make water filters just like mine. Wow. But they're really hard to make. And the technology was invented in Guatemala, where my family lives. So I actually studied with the factory where the inventor of the technology came from. It's been around for 20 years. They've pioneered all of the best practices on this product and this technology, and they've slowly refined it over 20 years. I was able to start a company basically with 20 years of best practice research. So from day one, I knew what to do. And I think we're continuing to evolve. And because I'm so tapped into that network, and it's not just that company, there's about 40 companies in the world working on this technology, making this water filter. And wherever I can, I partner with them to share best practices. Because at the end of the day, the idea is to get people water. There's no competition here, right?
I love that understanding of, you know, collaborate, don't duplicate, right? Because again, it's a waste of resources and so on. So, you know, the other question that comes in is that, you know, what drives you? Because we can see you're a very passionate person, and look, you know, we kind of know why you starting this. It's a great answer, by the way. But what drives you when you wake up? I know you've been around, you know, Java recently, right? And when we're contacting you, it's like, I'm in XY, I'm in here, I'm over there, and, you know, moving around 10 hours in the car, right? You're moving around. But what drives you every day to get up and do what you do?
I think it's because obviously there's purely selfish reasons involved. There is a pandemic here of drinking water. I mean, people are getting sick. 70% of Indonesia's population has E. coli in the water. 70%. And I mentioned those SDGs. The Indonesian Ministry of Health, their goal is access to water, which means they actually have a mission to pipe water to every family, but not to clean it. And that's actually the norm all over the world, because filtering water, making pure water is actually, it's not difficult, but it's resource intensive. So the idea is if you can get people water, then they can clean it themselves. You could do something as simple as boil the water for 3 minutes, but you have to boil it for 3 minutes, which most people don't do. No. So I think, obviously that motivates me, the social side of things. But I think the other, for me, is just that this is the future. It is literally the future of water. Water, the Earth's natural processes filter water. If you look at the quality of water in Bali, your starting water, it's not that bad. Even though they use chemicals and fertilizers in the rice paddies, the Earth is doing its job, right? So these water bottle companies want you to believe that filtering water is so difficult, you should buy their plastic water bottles. Okay. But it's not true. And I think that's where disrupting the water bottle industry, perhaps that's what motivates me, that this is a basic human right and it's not that hard.
Love that. So how inspiring is she? It's amazing. And so the other question that comes in is, we know it's you, we know you're doing it, we know you want to disrupt the whole industry, but if there's somebody out here maybe watching now and they're thinking, well, okay, I love the idea of what she's doing. I love her energy, and I can see that she's got runs on the board. I can see that she's smart because she's licensing, open source technology, which has been around for a while, that's been proven. So she's not trying to reinvent the wheel, right? So then the question is two-sided, right? So the first side of it is, what is it that you need? If someone's there saying, I can contribute to you, what is it that you need? Then the second side of that question is, what is the most challenging thing that you're facing now? So what is it that you need from a contribution point of view, whatever that looks like, and what's the biggest challenge facing you now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, what do we need? We need people to demand drinking water at an affordable cost and without a plastic bottle. So how many restaurants at warungs are there in Bali? I mean, so many, right? You can eat at a different place every day and never eat at the same place. And how many of them charge for water? And how many of them serve water in a plastic bottle? Something as simple as carrying your own bottle and demanding that they refill it with gallon water and willing to pay for it. Behavior change. It gets them to think, I can monetize this, but I'm doing something good for the environment, right? So you start to kind of move back into that deep-rooted culture and change people's minds that way. And so I think that's huge. You go to a restaurant, you demand refill gallon water. Ask them to fill your bottle up. And tell them you're happy to pay for it, right? And most of the time they won't even make you pay for it. So I think that's what we need, because by doing that, you'll get people to use things like filters. They'll stop buying plastic water bottles. Sungai Watch, a great partner of ours, they do this incredible trash report. I think it's every quarter. And every single quarter, the biggest polluter is Denyon. It's the water bottle company. And it's those tiny little cups. And then from there, it's the 500-liter bottles, right? So
let's get this straight. The water company is the biggest polluter.
The biggest polluter in the country. Yep. Every single quarter, as far as I've looked back. Yes. So it's a huge problem. So I think that's the first thing people could do. They can just start demanding water. The other thing you can do is at home, you can invest in things like filters. Not only will they save you a ton of money, but they'll save you time. They're better for your health because they keep all the healthy minerals inside. They remove things like microplastics. So if you're still drinking out of gallons, you now don't have microplastics you're dealing with. So that's really where I think, again, the future of water is it's not in a plastic bottle. And we've started a small movement, and we haven't really launched it yet, but it's #free the water, like free the tatas, but so, free the water. So free it from plastic.
So #free the water. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Our biggest challenge is that behavior change. I think Westerners, we come from a place where maybe we can drink out of the tap. In my country, you can drink out of the tap. Your country, I know where you're from. We can drink out of the tap. You can't here, right? So one of our biggest, my company in particular, our primary market are Indonesian families. There's 270 million people in this country, right? If you think about where the trash is coming from, where the change really happens, it's with the local population. We have lots of expats who buy our product. It's fantastic, but it's a small percentage of the population. So our biggest challenge is educating Indonesians, really, that it's that purifying water isn't so difficult, right? And that if they could see firsthand the work that organizations like Sungai Watch are doing, that all the trash that Trash Hero picks up, I think it would slowly start to change their mind because they would see their impact. 80% of Indonesia's waste comes from Java and Sumatra. Much of it washes up on Bali's beaches. So you kind of have to get that education back to the root of the people who are causing the problem at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, I'm a small water filter company. I am not going to compete with Aqua or Balian. But if I can make a dent, then it's time well spent. Places like Guatemala, the filters are supplying water to 40 to 50% of the country's population.
That's huge.
Yeah, so they've been able to do it in 20 years. Granted, they only have 18 million people, but it can be done.
Yeah, it's a positive side. Now, if anyone here has any questions, in the audience, we'll get that third mic, guys. Yep, great. Get the third mic out. Just raise your hand, and then you can ask a question. George, we know you have questions, so that's coming. Now, like the next thing is, so future. If there's some government, like I met someone the other day who's connected to the health minister, tourism minister, a few other ministers, of Indonesia. So if they're watching now, like what would you say to them? And again, we've asked you already, what is it that you need? But on that level, it might be different. So what kind of level of contribution, and where could they start?
Yeah, that's a great question. Indonesia's actually moving in the right direction. They really are. Just this year, my company applied for several different competitions, one of which was called the Catalyst Changemakers. It's Tokopedia and Gojek's foundations. They had a water competition, and we got it. So we are, yes, thank you.
Applause.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So if Indonesia's unicorns can do it, then the Ministry of Health can do it, right?
You know what? Like this is true. Another true story. So we only realized, well, you knew before, but I didn't know. So when we actually spoke about a year or so ago, right? When we talked, and then it was my partner, my beloved Marina, who said, "Hey, this woman, Christine, she's amazing, and I think you should have her on the show." And I thought, okay. And then I went to type your number, and it's like, oh, we already had this conversation a year ago that we didn't complete. So tomorrow is World Water Day. Yeah. So you're like, what? So World Water Day, like, what does that mean to you?
It's just a reminder that water is a basic human right, and we take it for granted. It's like the clothes we wear. Some people are really invested in this slow fashion industry, right? In Bali, it's really popular. Sustainable dyes, sustainable materials. If you go to a place like Bandung, Java, it's the most polluted river in the world just outside of Jakarta because of the textile dyes, right? So that really brings it home. We don't think about water. We take a shower, we drink it, we buy it in a plastic bottle. You have no idea where it comes from. This partner in Guatemala actually did a study on what the carbon was of a water bottle factory and a ceramic water filter factory like mine. And it was 600 times more water to make water in plastic bottles than it was to make my filters. 600 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
600 times.
More water just to put water in a plastic bottle than it was to make ceramic filters to clean water. So there are options out there. And I think to your question, if we were to sit down with the Ministry of Health and these organizations that are truly responsible for creating change in this country, there has to be an incentive, right? Because my behavior change only goes so far. I can only make water so sexy before it's just not sexy. At some point, it's got to be what we have to do, what we're required to do. And we're required to look for more sustainable solutions.
I love it. Wonderful. So now questions. So Ayub, have we got that microphone? So just raise your hands if you have a question, and we'll bring the mic to you. And then in a minute as well, we'll also quickly discuss the products that Terra has. I'm really interested to know. So George, over to you.
Yeah. Christine, so from a cost perspective, how much is it saving families, financially to have a water filter versus having buying plastic bottles and gallons and everything else per year or per month? Is there a big saving for them?
There absolutely is, George. In fact, if you buy 3 gallons a week, which is probably on the low end, it depends on how many people in your family, you would save 7 million rupiah in 2 years. So that's $500 back in your pocket just from switching to a water filter. And that's 3 gallons a week. We're working with hospitality partners now. We're looking at saving $3,000 a month in some places.
Right, okay. And does that, and then so then once they've got the filter, they hold the filter for let's say forever in theory, but they just need the actual carcass, but then they just change a filter every how often?
Correct. So the filter unit is made from terracotta clay. It's 100% natural, and it lasts for 2 years. After 2 years, you keep the casing, so the filter sits in a basin or a container. You can keep the container as long as you want, but if you change your kitchen, maybe you want to change your container color. But the filter is replaceable every 2 years for only 250,000 rupiah for 2 more years of water. And you can do that forever.
Wow, that's so reasonable. That makes commercial sense for everybody to have one.
Yeah, those cost savings are exponential, right? They're compounded at that point. So you save $500 the first year, you end up saving $2,000 the subsequent years.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Great. Now, while you any more questions, just have a look. So Terra, so if people want to find you, where do they look? How can they get in touch? How do they collaborate with you? How does it work?
We are trying to be more active on social media. We're Terra Water Indonesia on Facebook and social media. Our website is actually quite good and really informative. We have our water tests. We talk a lot about how the filter works. So those are probably the 2 best ways to find us. You could talk to a couple people in this room who have my phone number.
You know, what I'm left with this comment, the takeaway for me is making water sexy. You know, like that's what's left, man. It's absolutely true. You know, it really is. So then, final question, or come on to final questions for me. You know, like we've spoken about this before, but maybe we put it all together in one so people here can take action. You know, what kind of future would you like to see, and how can we get there?
I think the future is open source water, right? It is, and it's not just open source water, it's how can we take something that we would have taken for granted and make it beautiful? And I think that's where, going back to making water sexy, we have a product line that is truly beautiful, handmade, artistic, made by local artisans, comes in beautiful colors, 100% natural. You want a color in your kitchen, we can make it, right? And you're replacing these ugly plastic gallons. I see a future where people, they're empowered to find sustainable solutions for everyday things. And water is one of those things that you wouldn't think about, but when you listen and you embark on dialogues like we've had today, you start to realize, you'll see it everywhere now. I do. I just moved into a new place. I moved in and there was a plastic gallon the second I moved there, and immediately called my staff and said, I need a filter tomorrow. I just refused to use it, right? So it's these conscious decisions. You go down to the beach and you order a coconut, and if they bring you a plastic straw, what do? You say, oh, I should have brought my bamboo straw, right? So this starts to happen over time. That's what needs to start happening. And it's my obligation, it's my mission to continue to educate you and everybody else in the country to try to get there. Because if I didn't do that, it'd be lost. I mean, just the power of sheer marketing, right? And sheer competition. So it's my job to educate, but it's your jobs to be educated and be receptive to that dialogue.
Love it. So look, what we're going to do in a minute, so how we end the show is that, so we hand over to you, the guest, and if there's anything that maybe you wanted to discuss that we haven't done already, or anything that comes in to like, I forgot that, or a reminder, feel free to give it, okay? And to those of you watching here, so remember, so what we do in the upcoming months, Speak Up, there's going to be a few amendments. We're into, I think, year number 4 or 5 already, 250 plus episodes. And so we'll be having panel discussions. We'll be having, sessions where we can go deeper. So if this topic has moved you tonight, and by hell, I think it should, then reach out to us. We'll be creating a session with Christine that will be like a mastermind of sorts, which you can kind of go deeper and come up with some actionable results. Out of it might come some collaborations or something that can move this dialogue forwards, right? So I just want to thank you, Christine, for being part of this. And it's taken us a year, but hey, better late than never, and probably now is the perfect time. So I really appreciate you. And those who have come today, thank you very much indeed for your time. Those watching, feel free to make sure that you watch Speak Up Monday. We have some incredible guests coming up in the next few weeks and months. So join Speak Up Monday on Instagram, on Facebook, and YouTube. So finally, over to you, our guest. Thank you so much for saying yes and educating us all in where we can go with water and things that we probably take for granted, and how we can get more out of it and also help the planet at the same time. So over to you.
Yeah, Rob, I think it's interesting. you asked me before we sat up here if there was anything, like any plugs that I wanted to make or anything in particular I wanted to talk about. And I think the truth is I love my company. I love what I do. It's the best job ever. I mean, I have a social mission. I have an environmental mission. I get to run a business in a place like Bali. There's nothing that could go wrong. But at the end of the day, it's actually a really hard job. And Hasina, who's in the audience today, she runs a really great show at Dojo called Lady Boss. And I spoke more about the entrepreneurial journey and how difficult and challenging it can be to run something like a social enterprise where you're committed to the financial and operational sustainability of the business, but you have a social mission. And that's where this idea of making what you're doing sexy comes in. And when it comes to the science of marketing safe water solutions, it's actually a really difficult job. We've introduced a traditional technology into the population. It's clay. It's 3 ingredients. It's clay, it's activated carbon, and it's colloidal silver. That's all it is. It looks like a garden pot. So how do you make people get excited about this, right? And at the top of the pyramid, it's easier because people are motivated by the environment. They're motivated by the social side. They'll come to a talk like this, and they're motivated by somebody who's motivated in the first place. But then you get to the bottom of the pyramid, and you realize these people are motivated by a new motorbike, or a new television, or a new cell phone. So what I have to do is convince them that my water filter fits into that same category. How do I make my water filter as cool as a brand new rice cooker? And that's the challenge. The closer you get to the bottom of that pyramid, the more resource intensive it is. In the city, we can put stuff on Instagram and they love it. You get out to the villages, it's person to person, it's community, it's who's the Cleon, what's the Banjar doing, what's the mosque doing, what's the temple doing, who's got what, right? And so it's incredibly difficult work for us. But there is science behind marketing safe water systems now, over 40 years of research. And I think we're doing a really good job of trying to follow some of these best practices. And going back to my point about the Indonesian market being our primary market, at the end of the day, that's what kind of company we want to be. But we have to speak their languages. And in Indonesia, with 17,000 islands and 30 plus languages, that's our challenge, right? But we're doing it, and we've been doing it for 2 years, and we're growing. So I just thought you guys might find that really interesting. That it's not as easy as introducing a beautiful water filter to the market, and everybody goes out and buys one. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Round of applause, everyone. Yeah.